onto the story of The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. In the review, Matthew Matosis measures the beginning cutscenes. Matosis considers the beginning to be short, but I honestly hated it. What I meant was the Deku Tree and storyline. Before 2016, at least, I considered it too long because of the text speed and honestly just because I wanted to play the game. Majora's Mask does the repetition and recycles resources better than Ocarina did, and I debate other N64 games as well. It's sort of obvious that Link is Hylian, and I don't recall them developing that aspect of him. I don't recall this aspect of the game blowing anyone away. Opposed to a wood elf, opposed to an elf with a fairy, opposed to a fairy elf with a fairy, he's a human. I do debate, though, that it may have set up how you don't expect that next twist. The Sheik twist was interesting. There's something I think Nintendo had for that trick. Might have been more ideas. I'll debate that later. They regressed due to bad feedback, possibly. Audience not understanding. It's still a Metal Gear Solid-ish plot twist for the series, even though it could have been a lot higher. And you notice all the little story 3D details in it, as you've seen in Super Bunny Hop and Matthew Matosis videos. So you figure they would have had something more special, but oh well. The game rewards you with a plot twist if you haven't been spoiled like I was. I don't know how I feel about it if I was never told what the plot twist was, but interesting. In the Deku Tree, you jump down, something 2D Zelda can't. I don't recall the Guardians story from the Deku Tree and what the story had to do with Zelda. Story can be told visually, not just for exposition and audio. And it's a video game, not an audio game, so this is very important. I briefly thought about the Guardian thing, but Matthew Matosis capitalizes on this aspect of the game. The time mechanic, also mentioned by Matthew Matosis, has been done well, and even I thought about that before, without anyone to talk about it before. It's not Chrono Trigger or Back to the Future, with constant comparisons to A Link to the Past. In fact, I don't know to this or prior to mention how many people thought of A Link to the Past prior. In certain instances, one would compare the N64 version of A Link to the Past similar to the Wii versions of Ocarina of Time. Is it worse? There's a bit of a formula in Zelda. Great sequels do something the same but something different at the same time, improving on the original while at the same time developing appreciation for the original. Something I'll discuss another time. That was lame. I do know how fans are wishing for a Space Link in the future. Super Mario Galaxy definitely added to that. Majora's Mask Moon would be a factor as well. Space and time. Where am I going at anywhere? Anyway, back to the point. There's problems with the Master Sword loading when you go to the Temple of Time as tediousness. In my later review, I'm going to go back to other things that even made this worse. I also agree with Matosis and state that I don't think many people consider the story when they think of Zelda. The story. Sorry for the long-winded point. The Deku Tree has some personality to it. Later on in my replay of the game analysis, I'll discuss why I regret making fun of the tree even more with Japanese show footage that was adapted for Power Rangers, Seiju Sentai Ginga Man, after all these years. Space Link rules. Lost Galaxy. Anyway, it also might have been the result of the text speed being so slow and not mixed well with the animations. But that's before I started coming to them why I dislike the story of the game. Also important is that the hub doesn't really tell a story that well, like the towns of Jabu Jabu, regrettably. Again, I wish this game had been made for the 64 DD, where the details could have really immersed you into the game. There is one game I debate that Matthew Matosis doesn't credit for adding to this, but I'll mention that later. Sort of like Shadow of the Colossus padding, basically. It's basically like Shadow of the Colossus padding, but the visuals aren't as good. However, one aspect of a hub is that the night monsters do play under the children's fear of the dark and imaginary things such as monsters. Something having to do with religions and temples and imaginary gods would have been interesting, but probably too smart and controversial for the time. There was a lot of backlash over church imagery in Legend of Zelda before. In Hyrule, you learn Zelda's lullaby, Sheik's lullaby, Impa's lullaby. Zelda apparently is a Sheikah. Good security for stealth and explaining it's a castle. The stealth missions and the ability to hide in places make it feel a lot bigger, which I'll get later into my later review. Jabu Jabu. Finding out the fish opened the dungeon was pretty cool. I sort of found Princess Ruto annoying, and everyone growing up along with me agreed with this. I'm not a fan of protecting people in missions, and this one didn't help. A lot of people I knew criticized this mission, although Matosis said it was creative. As kids, we made fun of the idea of throwing Ruto all over the place. Ruto in the middle, etc. The Goron and Zora are interesting races. I'm not that familiar with Zelda that I would know whether the Goron and Zora were introduced in previous iterations, but they seem to be very good creations wherever they came from. From their character design to other things that I'll mention in my later review, they're very good. Saria's setup for part 2 is interesting. She was really one of my favorite characters in the game, albeit I sort of forgot prior to replaying it. As to whether Saria was initially supposed to have a larger role, I'd say yeah, that was probably intended for the Nintendo 64 DD, but as it is, it's satisfying, not mention making her more of a after the replay thing. Story-wise, I haven't appreciated the things Matthew Matosis mentioned until they were mentioned. Ganon's life was pretty interesting. I really enjoyed exploring Gerudo Valley. It made Ganon more relatable, and it made the story a little bit darker that way. A little bit more realistic. Link being the non-isolationist explorer adds to the story, signifying why people don't want this game. In addition to the Ganon Mambo Jumbo, magic, evil, etc. In Gerudo Valley, it's annoying to get caught, but again, old school 2D mentality of trial and error. If you played Ninja Gaiden, like, this was a piece of cake. I don't know if it was annoying, but I had a lot of fun doing it. It's good for Twitch trolling. As Matosis said, it's sort of like the King Zora kind of good, kind of annoying, going through Gerudo Fortress, in my opinion. The Sword of Time mechanic is a bit of a trek. Probably glitchiest without the tempo load, though. Speaking of need for Legend of Zelda options, did I speak of it? Oh well. They need a song to change the options. That'd be cool. I forgot how many notes are in the 3DS version, but Matthew Matosis mentioned there's 5 in the 64 version. The hookshot being imprecise is quite annoying. There's no storyline reason for the hookshot and the boomerang, neither for the hookshot being so imprecise. But I don't know, I really don't like 64 controls in general anyway. That's about it for story, but I'll talk a little bit more about gameplay elements. The stealth was fun because of their shields. I don't know if it's possible to defeat them without the jump attack. Bongo Bongo is a memorable boss. I sort of don't want to defeat him whenever I fight him, just because it's so fun being in the level. And there's no way to replay it, I think, unless you have a save file there, because you can't really replay the final bosses in the game, unfortunately. That's a thing to get added in another edition. Tunics are wasted. His point about wearing the Majora's Mask versus the Ocarina tunics was very good. Matthew Matosis, that is. I feel like if they were done like an Iron Man coat of arms thing, it could have been interesting. They might have done that in a future game too, but I don't want to get into that. Majora's Mask does this very well, which Matosis covers later on. The Water Temple, I don't know if I hated it as much as Matosis did, but it was interesting and it was scenic, but he doesn't really, I think it's mainly because he doesn't like the water effects thing. You like Ocarina, you pretty much like the Water Temple. You don't like Ocarina and don't think it's the best thing in the world, you don't love the Water Temple. That's how I feel about it, at least. I've only played against Dark Link once, so I don't know, I can't verify if that's the only way to beat Dark Link. It might have been overwhelming, but I'll have to see in the replay version. I thought about it subconsciously, but the trick does seem large. Not sure if you saved the world, but the adult Hyrule hub is terrifying. I remember him saving the Gorons. That was a pretty cool thing in the game. So like Sonic in the 3D games and with the shoes and everything. I also forgot how many dungeons are in this game. C button for Iron Boots would have been a nice inclusion. The 3DS version is good because the menuing is a lot faster. It requires a lot of loading. Talk about the side quests another time.